your guess is as good as mine. Roddy White with the Falcons, yet Brandon Marshall with the New York Jets. Those are big-time receivers. Quarterback concerns or playing time concerns, things of that nature. But I'd take Roddy White over Brandon Marshall. Vincent Jackson down in Tampa Bay looks like a good pick again this year. Deshaun Jackson in Washington does not. Sammy Watkins in Buffalo, terrible quarterback situation. Avoid him at all costs. Golden Tate in Detroit is a great value pick in your mid-rounds. Martavis Bryant from the Steelers is also a great value pick, as well as Brashad Perryman and Steve Smith of the Ravens. Dante Adams of the Green Bay Packers. Get this guy anytime after round 4. If it's round 5 and you're looking receiver and Davante Adams is still on the board, take Davante Adams. He is going to explode now in his second year with Jordy Nelson on the sidelines. And then finally, a couple small names to keep in mind would be Victor Cruz, Dorial Green-Beckham of the Tennessee Titans, Funchess for the Panthers, Kenny Stills as well down in Miami, Brandon LaFell in New England. And then finally, the tight end position, as I will not acknowledge the defense or the kickers especially. You can figure those out on your own. But when it comes to tight end, now this is the only position that's more thin than the QB position. I have one name at the top, and that is Gronk. And there's a big line underneath that. And then there's about 15 spaces, and I turn the page over, and then there's the rest of the tight ends. That's how big of a difference there is between Rob Gronkowski and every other tight end in the NFL. Now, if you're not the person who's crazy enough to take Gronk in the first round, you're going to be stuck picking one of these other guys somewhere in rounds 4 through 15 or however late your draft goes. So let's focus on that second tier of tight ends, okay? Now, we've got Jimmy Graham out in Seattle. Jimmy Graham, talent-wise, is on the same tier as Gronk. However, he had a down year last year production-wise, and he's going to a new team where he's going to be asked to run block a lot more, and where they don't pass the ball a lot. If they're in the red zone, is it going to go to Graham or is it going to go to Lynch? Or a lot of question marks there. But so you've got Jimmy Graham, big risk, big reward. Well, I wouldn't say big risk, but risk reward. They're leading the candidates in that second tier. We've also got Travis Kelce as a huge hot name. Came on really big in the second half of last year, tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs. He's a guy that, if you can get him as a value tight end because the people in your league haven't heard of him, that's a great pick. But if you're taking him as the second or third tight end off the board and we're only in round 5, you might get burnt on that. You might be reaching a little bit, and you might be better off taking a different position and just getting a pair of potential tight ends later on in the draft, where as long as one of them works out, that can be your starter and you're good to go. But so those are the two that I've got at the top of my second tier list. Then I've got Kyle Rudolph of the Minnesota Vikings. All this guy needs to do is play 16 games, and he's a top 5 fantasy football tight end. But he has a hard time finding his way onto the field for 10 games a season, so that's the issue there. I've also got Julius Thomas, who last year was one of the top 3 tight ends in fantasy football. He was Peyton Manning's tight end in Denver. Now this year he went and, in the offseason he cashed a big free agent payday and signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I actually love this for his fantasy football value. He is going to super stud talent-wise at least, second-year quarterback Blake Bortles, who had nobody to throw to at any position in his rookie season. And, primarily, history tells us that when we have young, inexperienced quarterbacks or mediocre quarterbacks, the tight end on that team is by far the number one receiving option, almost always, whether they're good or not. So Julius Thomas, if he's healthy, should actually put up great numbers down in Jacksonville as Blake Bortles' number one target, and then open things up easier for the other receivers they've got down there. Now, after Julius Thomas, I've got 3 more names here in my top tier, and then it all gets really fuzzy. So rounding out that second tier of tight ends, like I said, after Julius Thomas, we've got Martellus Bennett of the Chicago Bears. He's pretty solid, actually, pretty safe, one of the safer ones here. You've got bust potential with Graham and Kelce and Rudolph and Thomas. And ironically enough, the bust potential with Bennett, I would say, is less than any of those other guys. Because for whatever reason, whether it's Cutler or McCown or whoever in Chicago, he seems to always put up the numbers no matter what. Greg Olsen, next name on the list for the Carolina Panthers, with Benjamin gone, with no leading receiver. Cam Newton has to throw the ball to somebody. And so Greg Olsen actually should be rising up this draft board and arguably be the number 2 ranked tight end on here. Now, the last name that I would put in the same category would be Delanie Walker of the Tennessee Titans. Now, he's been a great fantasy producer for the last year or two very quietly. And he's got an improvement at the quarterback position, a lack of other weapons at wide receiver, and the quarterback happens to be a rookie who's going to be constantly going to the safety blanket, a.k.a. your tight end. So Delanie Walker is another one, man. Put a star by that guy. If you can get him as your starter in rounds, 7 through 15, that's where your value is, okay? But that's where the line is drawn, okay? And then everybody else, big question marks. Some of these guys might do good. Some of these guys are going to do terrible, okay? But so we got Antonio Gates. I assume he's still playing. Had a resurgent year last year, very surprising. You've got the 2 tight ends in Indianapolis, Coby Fleener and Dwayne Allen. Fleener last year was way more the regular receiving threat, catch more passes, get more yards, more big plays. Dwayne Allen was the I'll get a touchdown at least every week guy. So if it's the same way this year, then you can't really go wrong with either one of them. However, if one of them does end up being a true number 1 at some point in the season over the other, then you need that guy on your fantasy football team at tight end if you don't have Gronk, or Greg Olsen or Delanie Walker. If nothing else, as injury insurance, for your injury-prone starter. But then after that, it gets really, really slim. We got Jared Cook in St. Louis, Owen Daniels running his Gary Kubiak offense in Denver for Peyton Manning. That should be a really good value one much later on in the drafts as well. Also, Jordan Cameron down in Miami could actually be a really nice surprise, or he could fade into obscurity. I think this is a make-or-break year for free agent tight end signee Jordan Cameron. And then everybody else is pretty much everybody else. You got this guy named Clay. I'd avoid him. Zach Ertz of Philly, avoid him. Hill from the Saints, avoid him. Donald from the Giants, avoid him. You can get him via free agency. Max Williams, M. Williams. Some M. Williams, not sure where that is. Heath Miller, avoid him. Ebron for Detroit, avoid him. Tyler Eifert of the Bengals is probably the only other guy on this whole list that I would name. So we've got 2, 4, 6, 8. 8 guys that I feel good about as, they can be a starter. And then after that, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guys that could maybe be a surprise. So tight end is super thin, and you're going to want to think long and hard before you draft about what your game plan is with that position this year. All right, that is it. We are wrapping up the meat. No, we are not. The meat is still not wrapped up. We do have a tiny bit of football to discuss yet. Okay, so we've got college football as well coming up here very soon. I believe that starts in a week, something like that, September 5th, somewhere in there. Week and a half, real soon. But so we've got power rankings and all that good stuff coming out in the college football world, schedules, things of that nature. Your Minnesota Gophers should probably be pretty good this year. The Jerry Kill era has been good. We've actually got a coach that's turning the program around. Everything I'm hearing in the area suggests that our secondary is the best in the Big Ten and is going to give us a chance to win. Our quarterback situation is still, we'll have to wait and see if that is improved or not. But again, the words coming out of camp or preseason, I should say, is that our passing game is actually looking fairly good at the moment. But also that we will be a very run-heavy team as well. But so I think expectations for your Gophers got to be, winning record or better, make it to a bowl game and win a bowl game. It doesn't have to be a big bowl game. We don't need to win the Big Ten championship and go to the Rose Bowl. Just that, if that happened, you wouldn't need to win. That'd be huge. But that's where we're getting at with this rebuilding phase in our program. Is the expectations now are going to be more standard for a respected football program and university. And so good luck to the Gophers. It's been a long time since they really were relevant, and they have kind of become at least a little bit relevant. So hopefully they will continue that. Their schedule does start out tough. I want to say their first game of the season is against TCU, and TCU is one of the top 5 teams in the country. So they'll get a big test right off the bat. But the Big Ten Conference, for the most part, once we get into the Big Ten Conference season portion of the schedule, isn't that scary. Outside of Ohio State, nobody's scary. Wisconsin seems to be our daddy, but other than that, we can beat pretty much everyone. Maybe Michigan State will be tough as well, but you got to think those would be our three of our biggest challenges in the conference schedule. Would be Ohio State, obviously defending champs, Wisconsin, who beats us every year for the last 10 to 13 years, and then possibly Michigan State, but they did lose quite a few quality pieces from last year to this year. All right, now in segueing from the meat is wrapped up. We're segueing into Balls Juice. Now we stay in college football to segue to Balls Juice because a juicy event happened this last weekend at the University of Southern California for an athletic department fundraiser, gathering, gala, event, whatever you want to call it. The head football coach of the USC Trojans, I believe his name is Steve. I think it's Steve, I'm not sure, but his last name is Sarkisian. And he, as the head football coach, and there's, boosters and donors and stuff there and everything. And so, he's got to be a part. He's kind of a celebrity. And, he had to get up and make a speech at one point in the evening or whatever. And he thought it would be a good idea to mix medication and alcohol before doing this, or at least that's the story now, is that he mixed medication with it as well. That's why he was so messed up. It wasn't just because he was that drunk, which I think that's hilarious and pathetic that you're trying to downplay and minimize what you did, your irresponsibility. But, it was because there was medication in there too. Well, even more stupid on your part than to go down the alcohol road in the first place then. Don't you think? But so anyway, so he got just wasted, gets up on the stage and starts dropping F-bombs, slurring his words. It's bad, and they had to drag him off of the stage. And later, of course, he apologized, and he's going to keep his job and everything, but there is no more alcohol at all allowed in their facilities, in the locker room, or anything like that. And when asked if he has an alcohol problem, he said no, he does not believe that he does, but he's going to find out if he has one or not, because he's going to do a treatment program for alcohol abuse. And I didn't like the way he started out that answer, but I really liked the way he finished it on the I don't think I do, I don't think I have a problem. That's a terrible way to start out, but the whole I'm going to find out, that was a great way to come back with that. It wasn't I don't think I have a problem, but I'm going to go to treatment. It's like, well, I don't think I have a problem, but I'm going to find out for sure if I have a problem or not. Because if I do, then something needs to be done about it. And if I don't, then I still need to make amends for this. But considering the timing of this, and if you know anything about recovery programs or treatment, interesting how he's going to fit that into the college football season and his busy schedule. Is that one of those things where, I'm totally going to do that, but I'm going to do it 6 months from now, when I have more time, and then of course 6 months from now everybody's forgotten about it and he doesn't do it, and then 12 months from now a similar event takes place again and he gets fired. That's the road we're going to go down. Hey, if that happens, you heard it right here on Balls Deep Sports Talk first. Okay. But so there, that was a pretty juicy event topic that took place. We already discussed a couple juicy ones, primarily in On Fire with the Wild assistant coach Daryl Sider. I do have one more semi-juicy